The first time I heard them, it was purely by accident. The engagement dinner was being held at the country club Daniel's family belonged to, polished floors, crystal chandeliers, and staff who smiled like they were trained never to blink. My daughter, Aisha, looked radiant in a soft blue dress, her hand resting lightly on Daniel's arm as if she had finally found solid ground. I had prayed for that. After her father passed away, it had been just the two of us against the world. I worked double shifts at the hospital. I sold the last pieces of my wedding jewelry to keep her in university. Every sacrifice had one purpose, her future. And now she was engaged. I had stepped away from the ballroom to find the restroom when I heard voices drifting from the terrace hallway. I recognized Daniel's voice immediately, smooth, confident. "And once we're married," he said, lowering his tone, "she'll combine the accounts. She trusts me, she doesn't even check her investments." A soft laugh followed, his mother. "Of course she doesn't," Mrs. Khan replied. "You said her father left her that property and the insurance payout, didn't he?" "Yes," Daniel said, "and her mother has no idea how any of it works. They're sentimental, not smart." I felt my body go cold. "Just make sure," Mrs. Khan continued, "that everything is legally shared after the wedding. Once it's in joint names, we can invest it properly." Their laughter echoed against the marble walls. I didn't breathe until their footsteps faded. For a moment, I wanted to storm in there. I wanted to slap him, to drag my daughter out of that ballroom and tell her everything, but I stood very still instead. Because anger is loud, and strategy is quiet. When I returned to the table, I smiled. Daniel stood as I approached. "Everything all right, Auntie?" "Perfect manners, perfect smile." "Yes," I said gently, "everything is perfect." And that was the moment I decided to play along. Over the next few weeks, I became the most agreeable future mother-in-law imaginable. When Daniel suggested a lavish wedding venue, I nodded thoughtfully, if that's what makes Aisha happy. When his mother hinted that merging finances after marriage was modern and practical, I sighed as though impressed. "You're right, young people know best these days." I watched them relax around me. I watched them grow comfortable. At home, I said nothing to Aisha, not yet. Instead, I called an old friend, Mr. Rahman, a lawyer whose children I had once babysat. "I need to understand something," I told him. "If my daughter marries and combines her assets, what protections can she put in place?" His pause was heavy. "A prenuptial agreement," he said carefully, "trust structures, asset protection clauses." "Good," I replied, "let's prepare everything." We worked quietly. The property her father left, we transferred it into a protected trust under Aisha's name only, the investment portfolio, locked with conditions requiring dual independent approval for liquidation, the insurance funds, structured so they could never be automatically merged without legal review. I asked Mr. Rahman to draft a prenuptial agreement that looked standard, but was ironclad. Then I waited. 3 weeks before the wedding, Daniel came over for tea. He was unusually warm that afternoon. "Auntie," he began, stirring his cup though he hadn't added sugar, "Aisha and I were discussing our future plans. It might be simpler if we consolidate everything once we're married." I widened my eyes slightly. Consolidate? "You know, joint accounts, shared investments, it builds trust." "Trust?" I nodded slowly. "Of course, that makes sense." His shoulders loosened. "But," I added gently, "I spoke to a lawyer friend, just to make sure everything is done properly. He recommended a small prenuptial agreement, just standard protection." The temperature in the room shifted. "A prenup," Daniel's smile flickered. "Yes," I said lightly, "nothing dramatic, just to protect both of you." His jaw tightened for half a second before smoothing over. "I'll have my mother look at it." "Of course," I replied. 2 days later, Mrs. Khan called. "I was surprised," she began coolly, "to hear about this legal document." "I thought it was wise," I said. "You mentioned investments. It's only sensible to protect assets on both sides." There was a silence, a calculating one. "Well," she said finally, "Daniel doesn't believe in starting a marriage with distrust." "Neither do I," I answered calmly, "which is why transparency is important." We agreed to meet. The meeting took place in Mr. Rahman's office. Daniel barely looked at Aisha. His mother flipped through the pages, her expression darkening with every clause. This states, she said sharply, that all premarital assets remain solely under Aisha's ownership. Yes, Mr. Rahman replied pleasantly, and any inheritance received in the future as well. And joint investments require independent legal counsel approval, she continued. Correct. Daniel finally spoke. This feels unnecessary. Aisha looked confused. It's just paperwork, Daniel. If we're not planning to separate, it won't matter. He hesitated. That hesitation was everything. Mrs. Khan closed the folder. If there is no trust, perhaps this marriage is premature. There it was. The mask slipping. I turned to Daniel. You said combining finances was about unity. Surely signing this won't change that. His silence stretched too long. Aisha's face paled as realization slowly dawned. You don't want to sign it, she asked softly. It's not about that, he muttered. It's about principles. Which principle, she whispered, that you only marry me if you can access my money. The room felt suddenly small. Mrs. Khan stood abruptly. We will not be insulted like this. And just like that, they walked out. The wedding was cancelled that evening. Aisha cried in my arms, not because she lost him, but because she finally understood. I feel stupid, she whispered. No, I said firmly, you feel betrayed, that's different. Weeks later, she thanked me. If you had confronted them that night, she said, I might have defended him. I knew she was right. Sometimes truth needs a stage. And sometimes the best way to expose someone is to hand them exactly what they asked for on paper. Daniel wanted access to her wealth. Instead, he signed nothing and lost everything. As for me, I never told him I had overheard that hallway conversation. He'll always wonder how his perfect plan unraveled. And that, I think, is the part I enjoy most.